What happens when you mix toxic romantic fantasy, supernatural wish fulfillment, emotional codependency, and the worst possible coping skills imaginable? You get Obsession, the new indie horror film from Curry Barker that somehow feels like The Monkey's Paw directed by somebody who survived modern dating apps. And the wild thing about this movie is that it actually has something to say beneath all the screaming and psychological destruction. So today we're talking about why Obsession is one of the most uncomfortable horror movies of the year, in the best way possible. The movie follows Bear. Yes, his actual name is Bear, which already sounds like a man destined to make catastrophic emotional decisions. Bear works at a music store along with his best friend Ian, their friend Sarah, and the girl that he's quietly crushing on, Nikki. And instead of handling those feelings like a normal adult human person, he discovers a supernatural object called the One Wish Willow. And because horror movies continue to prove that if a mysterious magical object exists, leave it alone. Don't touch it. Don't read Latin near it. Don't make wishes on it. Don't even look at it too confidently. But of course, Bear makes a wish anyway. For Nikki to love him more than anyone else in the entire world. And immediately the movie transforms into, congratulations, you have unlocked nightmare mode. Indy Navarrette is terrifying in this movie. She plays Nikki, and she absolutely carries this movie on her back like she's dragging it through the gates of hell. Her performance slowly shifts from charming and awkward to emotionally unstable to deeply, deeply frightening. And the scariest part is, she never feels like a monster. She feels emotionally real. And that's what makes the movie so uncomfortable. You understand why these characters are broken. You understand why they're lonely. You understand why they crave connection. But the movie keeps showing how love turns horrifying when it becomes possession instead of partnership, which is way heavier than I expected going into this movie. Which, speaking of, this movie understands modern loneliness. It isn't really a movie about ghosts or curses. It's about emotional entitlement. It's about wanting intimacy without vulnerability, connection without honesty, love without rejection. Bear basically wants to skip the terrifying human part of relationships and jump directly to guaranteed affection. And of course, the movie responds with, cool, here's your personalized psychological apocalypse. The horror works because it taps into real fears: abandonment, insecurity, dependency, obsession, and of course, the terror of losing yourself inside another person. The tone of this movie is chaotic in a good way. This movie somehow balances dark comedy, body horror, relationship drama, some elements of supernatural horror, and of course, emotional cringe comedy. And it all works. One minute you're laughing at awkward flirting, and the next minute you're staring at the screen like, oh no, oh no, this is bad. And the pacing also moves fast. This movie understands that modern audiences have been psychologically destroyed by TikTok attention spans. It wastes absolutely no time throwing you directly into escalating emotional catastrophe. Now, what some people may have an issue with or find kind of frustrating is there are several moments where our main character, Bear, just makes decisions that are so bad that you genuinely want to pause the movie and file a restraining order through the television. But of course, to be fair, that's kind of the point. The movie wants you to see how insecurity mutates into selfishness. Still, though, watching him self-destruct can be painful. This man has the emotional survival instincts of someone petting a raccoon in a gas station parking lot. Of course, this movie is not subtle. If you prefer horror that's restrained and elegant, this movie occasionally grabs you by the face and screams. It gets loud, it gets messy, it gets emotionally ugly. And I fully respect it for committing to the bit. Obsession takes a simple premise and weaves in several major themes that revolve around love twisted into control, emotional dependency, and the horror of violating another person's autonomy. The film's core idea is that forced affection is not real love. Bear wants Nikki to love him more than anyone in the entire world, but the wish transforms love into possessiveness and emotional imprisonment. The movie repeatedly asks whether love can exist without free will. A major reading of the film is that Bear's wish represents an attempt to control another person emotionally. The story serves as a cautionary tale about entitlement and manipulation disguised as romance. Nikki's transformation and loss of self becomes symbolic of what happens when someone's autonomy is taken away from them. The movie also offers commentary on nice guy culture, an unhealthy romantic fantasy. Bear initially appears sympathetic, but the film gradually exposes the selfishness beneath his longing. Some might even call it incel horror because it explores the danger of seeing love as something owed or obtainable through force. The relationship becomes horrifying because both characters are trapped in a destructive emotional loop. Nikki becomes overwhelmingly attached, while Bear cannot fully let go even after realizing the damage he has caused. Nikki's obsessive behavior is also portrayed as a loss of self. Rather than becoming evil, she seems consumed by emotions that are no longer authentically hers. The horror is less about possession and more as the destruction of individuality and agency. Of course, the movie also modernizes the classic monkey's paw style morality tale. Getting exactly what you want can become a nightmare. Instead of material greed, the wish centers on romance and emotional validation, making the consequences feel psychologically intimate. It also successfully taps into contemporary fears about unstable relationships, emotional volatility, loneliness, and dating culture. The horror comes less from supernatural elements and more from recognizable emotional situations pushed to terrifying extremes. Bear falls in love with an idealized version of Nikki rather than the real person. Once his fantasy becomes reality, he realizes the emotional intimacy he wanted cannot exist through coercion. The film argues that fantasies often collapse when confronted with genuine human complexity. Obsession feels like The Fly meets relationship anxiety, Audition meets Gen Z loneliness, and The Monkey's Paw filtered through modern internet culture. It's disturbing, stylish, emotionally ugly, and surprisingly smart. And the best part about this movie reportedly had a tiny budget of less than $1 million, and it still has turned into a legitimate box office success story. For horror fans, this is absolutely one of the most interesting genre movies of the year. Even if it leaves you sitting in silence afterward like, well, that escalated horribly. But what did you think of Obsession? Did it work for you? Or did it emotionally stress you out so badly that you needed to watch cartoons afterward? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, kids, if you ever discover a mysterious magical object that grants wishes, just leave it alone.
Do you like me?
What? Mommy.
No. Do you like me? Do you even like me at all? Is Nikki happy? Does Nikki like me?
Yeah. I'm your freaky Nikki.